here's my kitty DuDu. It's his nap time, laying down in his scratcher plate, stretching belly up, and he's dreaming. And oh yeah, I want to do a sketch of him. So here I've got my gooseneck tripod attached to an old sketch pad and my sketchbook right on top of the sketch pad. Now I'm starting to trace out his right ear, the contour outline super loosely in these broken segments of gentle lines to suggest the furry outline of his body, forehead, and the left ear. So kitty ears, they are like triangular prism shapes, adding some fur, tufts of fur inside the ear. Now I'm tracing out the shape of the upper jaw, the lovely eyes in much heavier lines, and now gently tracing out the shape of the nose, which is a triangle with a slit in the middle, the lower jaw. Now I'm gently pushing these lines to suggest the angles of his two front paws and the toes and the pads. Most of DuDu's pads are black except for two. And the furry texture of his arm. And this is his hind leg overlapping on top of his paw. Yep, so finishing his paw on top, and the elbow and the upper arm a little bit thicker, using these choppy lines to suggest the layers of fur. Tracing out his masquerade mask. And this stripe on the left and right of his face, and suggesting more pads and toes for his hind foot. Now I'm gently suggesting the loose contour outline of DuDu's belly area along with the long fur texture. So when you're sketching animal fur, really observe deeply to see how the direction of each area of fur is laid out instead of randomly getting those lines in. So I'm following my observation to get the long fur texture of DuDu's body in. Starting to add these whiskers, eyebrows, and then, shading in his ears with solid brown ink. And then having fun adding the stripes on his masquerade mask. Using these pretty much continuous scribbly lines. Following the rhythm that I see how the fur is laid out. And DuDu continues on dreaming. I think he's having a lot of fun in his dreamland hunting for something. Here's the look of my finished line work of DuDu, which took me about 10 minutes to draw. Now it's time to paint watercolors. Starting with pretty diluted yellow ochre for the masquerade mask area and the ears. And continue to add on this diluted yellow ochre for the black area of DuDu's fur, which is actually the underlay color below the black. I'm also mixing in a tiny bit of Van Dyke brown, is yellow brown. Now, second layer for the black area, wet into wet, is the mix of Van Dyke brown and black. Less watery compared to that yellow ochre below. My brush marks are following the rhythm of growth of the fur. And I'm constantly going back to my palette to grab a more concentrated version of black mixed with Van Dyke brown. Yep, for the fur of animals is always uneven because of the layers of hair. And then, yeah, the forehead area is more intense, dark sepia to black. Okay, so I'm gonna let the black area to dry off a little bit, grabbing some very diluted red to paint his little nose. And now I'm grabbing some leftover blue-violet gray, diluting it with a lot of water to shade DuDu's arms. For both human and animal arms, they are cylinders. To make the cylinders look 3D, make one side shaded and the other side illuminated. And keep using these grays to shade DuDu's body. Now, I'm doing wet into moist. The previous layer is dried off, almost. So now as I'm adding this very intense blackish brown, the intensity is not fading off. If the previous layer is still too wet, this tone would fade off. So timing is very important when you're trying to paint very powerful watercolors. When you're adding on another layer, you may want to make sure your previous layer is very much dried off. And continuing to use very diluted grays to shade DuDu's belly area to suggest the volume of fur. Now, I want to paint a charming background for DuDu to lay on, starting with yellow mixed with yellow-green for the lightest tone of an imaginary lawn. Yeah, playing with lemon yellow and yellow-green, and then viridian green for the lower part of this imaginary lawn. And DuDu loves to lay down on the grass in the spring and summertime in the backyard to take his nap. Yeah, so I'm having fun creating this gradient of greens. Now, using leftover blue-violet to add on shadows. So DuDu is really laying down on the green. Yeah, so here is my quick 20-minute sketch of DuDu. And he changed position. And now I want to sketch this little packet of Pokemon crackers, chocolate flavor. And I want to draw this packet sideways so it looks more lively on the page. And two corners are like running out of space, chopped off from the page, which is intentional. Yeah. When you're art journaling, it's okay to have, part of your object to run out of space, which is pretty dramatic. And then adding these label details, having fun drawing this lovely graphic of Pikachu, yeah, which I think is the most well-known character from Pokemon. Yeah, his chubby, happy face, the arms, body, and that lightning tail. And then these words on the packet. So I found this snacks in a box of 6 packets from Walmart. And this tastes similar to Oreo, but without the cream in the middle. And it's less sweet. And it's peanut free, very kid friendly. And I used much gentle lines to suggest the wrinkles on the packet. Final details, and that's very much it for the quick line drawing. Now painting watercolors, starting with yellow as usual, blending cadmium yellow with a little bit of orange for a sense of shading. And when you're using yellow from your watercolor palette, make sure it's not contaminated with any other colors on top of it. And then using pure permanent red for the cheeks and some other red areas on the package. Okay, so now I'm grabbing some cerulean blue using a fairly diluted version to paint most of the package area surrounding Pikachu. As you can see, I'm leaving some thin little streaks paper white to suggest the shine on the plastic package. Yeah, and painting the upper wrinkled edge very loosely. Now adding on a second layer by mixing cerulean blue with a little bit of cobalt blue, suggesting some mid and shade tones on this blue package. Again, leaving those white streaks pretty much paper white, and no touch of some of those areas that's supposed to be brighter and those white streaks. And grabbing some leftover colors to paint these little patches of shapes on the package. Intensify the reds a little bit. And using cobalt blue, less watery, to shade the package a little bit more. Again, no overpainting. There are some brighter blues that are supposed to stay what it is. Using leftover violet to shade the yellow body of Pikachu. So don't be afraid to shade your yellow things with blue violet, the complementary color of yellow. Especially Pikachu is part of the uneven package surface. It's not just a simple flat yellow shape. Okay, and adding some more stronger blue violet to shade, a little bit of the package, especially the left side. The windows are on the right, so I see some denting areas on the package, more shaded. And when you're shading something yellow, you can make sure your blue violet is pretty diluted, so it's not too harsh on the yellow thing. Using violet and then blue to paint the shadow of the package. Using the wet into wet technique. Some final retouches and refinements on the package. Using blue to outline the Pokemon word. A little bit stronger red. That's it. Now I'm ready to draw these three little cookies. So I've got Squirtle, Pikachu, and Bulbasaur. And just getting these circular coin shapes in. 1, 2, 3. Very much the same sides. And I want these little cookies to overlap a little bit. And then suggesting the thickness of each coin-sized cookie. Using lighter lines to draw the graphics of Squirtle's face. And then Pikachu. And then I think this one is Bulbasaur, kind of like a frog carrying a flower on the back. And they're all adorable little creatures from the imagination world. And intensifying the blue for the shadow of the package a little bit. And now ready to paint. So first layer is the mix of orange and burnt sienna, the lightest tone of cocoa or chocolate. Let it dry off a little bit. Now wet into moist, some pure burnt sienna, just mostly on the left side. The right side is getting a lot of daylight. And the areas surrounding these faces of Pokemons is of lower elevation, so that's why it's a darker brown compared to the faces. So now these faces of Pokemons, they're popping out on a higher elevation. And then painting the shadows using leftover bluish gray. Second layer, more intense blue, and that's it. Now, moving on, I think I want to do a little mini landscape of the view outside my window upstairs. And spring is arriving very slowly here in Vancouver than usual. I'm going to zoom in and just focus on this small aspect. Starting to draw these evergreen trees and the roof and the upper level of my neighbor's house. Railings and two people passing by the curb. And the fences of that neighbor's house in the far distance. Lamp post, along with two shrubs. And then using almost like a continuous line to draw the medium shapes that I see for this neighbor's house. I see a lot of big and small triangles, trapezoids, and another lamp post in the middle ground. And the tree, yeah, a little bit behind the lamp post. And drawing the corner of the lawn here, and the neighbor's fences, finishing this large tree here, following the irregular organic shape that I see, and the rooftop of another neighbor's house. Finishing the inner details of this house here with sections of rooms, and then the windows inside each square section, and adding these smaller windows on the side, and then the contour outline of the mountains in the far distance, and a couple more trees, electricity post, finishing the mountains. And I want to include a car parked on the side of the street, and finishing this half of that neighbor's house, tracing these geometrical shapes out. And now I'm adding this foreground tree. It's a maple tree, yeah. Double lines for the larger branches, single lines for the twigs. Branches of the cherry tree. Yeah, here's my 7-minute drawing. And I'm going to spend another 7 minutes or so to paint watercolors. Starting to paint the sky as usual. I just wet it with clear water. And then putting on this very diluted cadmium yellow. And then grabbing some pure cerulean blue to overlap with the yellow a little bit. And mixing cerulean blue with cobalt blue for the higher part of the sky. The sky is very mellow at this time of the day, and also because of the weather, it's kind of cloudy. Using pure cobalt blue to paint the mountains in the far distance in the north. And intensifying the higher part of the sky with stronger cobalt blue. Mixing cadmium yellow with yellow green for the lawn. Wet into moist, some viridian green for a bit of color and value transition. And mixing yellow ochre with viridian green for the first layer of these evergreens. And then for some darker tones, I mixed burnt sienna with viridian green for a bit of color as well as value transition. So to make your objects look more real and three-dimensional, you have to use 2 or more values. And I'm going to do the same thing for the rest of the green arrays. Starting with a fairly diluted green and then a much more intense green for shading. At the same time, giving a sense of volume. And now I'm using pretty much Van Dyke brown to paint the rooftops. And glazing the exterior of the houses with very diluted yellow. Another layer of Van Dyke brown to intensify the rooftops for the middle floors as well. Using leftover gray to add on the shadow areas on the houses, on the street. And yeah, so the shading on these trees are pretty important to keep the scenery alive. And using Van Dyke brown with a bit of water control for value transitions, using leftover pink purple to suggest the germinating flowers. And these flowers already blooming on the maple tree branches is a mix of orange and permanent red, and a little bit of burnt sienna. So maple trees, they do flower in a very quiet way. The flowers are very small on maple trees. Intensify the roofs a little bit, with mostly shade, left edges illuminated. Final polish. And here's the look of my quick 15-minute ink on watercolor sketch. Life feels better when we just sketch these simple, mundane things and moments. So thank you so much for watching this video, everyone. If you like it, please click like and leave me a comment below. And I will see you next time pretty soon in another vlog tutorial video. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye.